Yeah.
Welcome to the third webinar of the Keto Challenge. All right.
What?
My brain is functioning pretty well right now because I'm pretty good into ketosis. Um, and I've been checking my blood glucose and my ketones. My ketones was at like a 4 this afternoon. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm adapting really well. And my blood glucose is always typically high in the morning time. And I was talking to another guy in ketosis, and he says, everyone's different, and it's just your body trying to adapt to having no sugar, so it's possibly dumping a lot of amino acids and changing it into proteins. Changing the proteins into glucose. So I'm like, all right, I cut back on protein a little bit, except for last night. Had a lot of steak, which was delicious. But other than that, we're going to dive into today my favorite topic, nutrition. And you're about to find out why, because I'm going to go geek on all of you guys. All right? So what we're going to do is I'm just going to share my screen. Bam. Can everyone see that? Complete Guide to Nutrition?
Yes.
Sweetness. Oh, all right. Present. Okie dokie smokies. So, the complete guide to nutrition. So why do we need nutrition, right? Most people are like, I can get my vitamins and minerals from my food, right? And my opinion, and it's funny because I even just went to another wellness practitioner, and she's like, yeah, I get all my foods and minerals from nutrition. I never take any supplements. And I'm like, to me, in the research, that doesn't really prove satisfactory of your body's needs, because the studies that I've seen, there's one study in particular done in the 2005 that showed spinach made back in 1960, just 45 years earlier, had 60% less nutrient dense than today was 60% less nutrient dense than it was back in 1960. So it's like we're losing, and then 10 years from now it's 11, 12, 13 years, right? From that point, where's our farming, our agriculture at, even if it's organic? I think the only way you could possibly do better is if you had your own garden, which I'm making a garden this year, and I'm starting it on this Sunday. So I'm excited about that. All right, so I feel like you don't really get it all from your food, and we don't diversify our food enough to really get the whole gamut as well. And then people are like, okay, so I can just take a multivitamin, right? That should be sufficient. To be honest with you, it's not. There's actually some studies out there that have studied people that took multivitamins and didn't take multivitamins. And the ones that took multivitamins died sooner than the ones that didn't take multivitamins. That was the only difference. And so it's kind of like, wow, so if you take a multivitamin, you're most likely going to die sooner than the rest of the population. So it's kind of like, well, okay, so that study, they were probably buying the cheapest Centrum at Walmart multivitamin. So yes, you can get better sources, but no, a multivitamin isn't sufficient. And I'm hearing some chatter on the other end. Holly, I think that might be you. You can just put you on mute, but you can still hear me. And if you want to chime in, you just unmute yourself, okay? And then a lot of people say when they take their vitamins, they don't notice a difference. And my thing is like, yeah, I don't notice every time, magnesium couples up with some enzyme to make something else. I don't feel that, do I? No. You don't feel it when it does happen or it doesn't happen. So my question though, before we go any further, I want to do an audience poll. And if you're watching the recording, I'm polling you right now in the future, okay? So Holly and Megan, unmute yourselves, or you know what? I just want you guys to take a guess, all right? How much does your body make in ATP every day in pounds? And I'll give you a hint. It's over 100. Can you guys take a guess?
300.
Holly?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm really bad at this technology thing. I'm going to say 500.
Whoa, Holly is actually the closest. The average person living the normal, average, non-sedentary lifestyle makes about 450 pounds of ATP a day. So if you wake up and you're a little bloated, you're a little heavy, and you step on the scale and you're like, oh my gosh, I gained 5 pounds, you can be like, I'm just making more energy today, because ATP is the currency that your body uses for energy. And that's what we're going to go into. All right. Your body is made up of cells. All these little cells make up this body, right? But what's inside the cell? Inside every cell, on average, you have 1,000 to 2,000 mitochondria, which are these guys inside this cell. There's 1,000 to 2,000 of these guys inside that. So you can imagine they're tiny, tiny little suckers that are called organelles. And their entire job is to make energy, specifically ATP, adenosine triphosphate. All right? And you're making this so much and so fast that it could literally, if you just bundle it all up in one day, it could be equal to 450 pounds of these little molecules. Another great thing is we can go, months without food. We can go weeks without water. We can go minutes without oxygen. But did you know you can go about 7 to 8 seconds without ATP? If all your ATP got shut off, you would die in 7 seconds. So these little suckers do a lot of work, keep you alive, keep you running. And what are you doing to feed them? So let's get into that. We are going to break down this chart, all right? This is something I learned in biochemistry back in Parker Chiropractic College. And I'm going to break this down for you guys right now, okay? So let me see, can I mark up my paper? Well, ooh, I got my little pointer here. This might be worth it. I don't know. I'm going to exit out of here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to share a different screen so I can write on this little piece of paper. All right. So you can still see this, this little diagram, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. So you see this glucose up here. You see the liver, but really what we're focusing on is fats and glucose, okay? So fats and glucose, and then you would have proteins, which is right here, but they don't really, it should be bigger. But glucose, proteins, fat. These guys right here are your main macronutrients, all right? You eat them and they come in, and let's focus on glucose. Glucose goes through like 6 different reactions called glycolysis and turns into pyruvate, all right? Now, when it goes through glycolysis and turns into pyruvate, you get all these NAD, NADH molecules. Now, you'll find NAD everywhere. It is also a very important molecule that produces energy for the body. It's constantly giving a hydrogen and taking a hydrogen. I'm going to pause and point out right here is a great point. You have lactate, right? So you have this lactic acid that gets produced from pyruvate. This happens when you work out, all right? But also, if you have this NAD and you don't have, you're not able to donate this hydrogen right here, this NAD will do a perpetual cycle and turn pyruvate into lactate if it doesn't have the proper hydrogen and doesn't have the proper NAD to donate the hydrogen, to like take the hydrogen from the glucose and give it to pyruvate. And then if it needs it again, it'll force pyruvate over to this lactic acid so that it can donate the hydrogen and turn back into NAD. People want to drink alkaline water all the time, thinking it's going to make them less acidic. But if you don't have your nutrition down, which NAD is from niacin and some other nutritional supplements, but mainly made up of niacin, if you don't have enough of this, then you're going to get a bunch of lactate because it's going to have to recycle itself constantly. I don't know why it's turning into that. Give me a second. Nope, not that. Okay, cool. Back to it. All right, so now we're back on topic. So then pyruvate goes into the cell, which this is already in the cell, but this here, this bad boy is your mitochondria, okay? So all this happening outside the mitochondria is happening inside your cell. This is happening inside the mitochondria. So pyruvate wants to get into the cell and turn into acetyl-CoA, which you get your ketones, right? So this is how glucose turns into energy, because then acetyl-CoA is the currency inside the mitochondria that goes into the Krebs cycle that turns everything, that goes through a 9-step process and turns everything into ATP. And it kicks out CO2, and it needs vitamin B2, B3, B6, B12, folic acid. I don't know what TMG is. I'll have to look this up in the book again. Magnesium, all right? It needs these things to function the ATP Krebs cycle or the TCA cycle, all right? But we're not worried about glucose. We're worried about fat. So when we eat fat, essentially, we need thyroid hormone and epinephrine, which comes from your adrenals. And so adrenals and thyroid need to be functioning right to turn your fat storages into triglycerides. Then triglycerides turn into fatty acids. And this is what I call the 3-step process of going and trying to get on a ferry, going from the mainland, right? You're eating your fat, you're in the mainland, and you're the fat molecule. You just came in onto the mainland, and then now you have to go buy a ticket from T3 and epinephrine to get to the port, right? And then once you get to the port, you need to buy another ticket to get on the ferry, which is carnitine and NAD. And that ferry is going to take you across into the energy producing, the island, the furnace to burn as fuel. All right. Now, what happens when you're deficient in thyroid hormone? What happens if you're deficient what if your adrenals are taxed and you're not making enough epinephrine? What if, this is the big one, carnitine? What if you're deficient in carnitine? That's actually very, very important. And we're going to dive into all of this because if you are deficient in these things, then you're limiting your ability to burn fat in your mitochondria and produce energy. But also what blocks this energy, all right? CoQ10 also is a huge component. B12, folic acid are huge components of burning the energy. But heavy metals are number one in stopping energy production in your cells. Like if you take arsenic, if you eat if you eat arsenic, it actually stops the energy production in your cells, and that's how people die from arsenic poisoning. And then the number 2 way that stops this energy flow is inflammation. Inflammation puts another big X in this thing. So we talked a lot about inflammation last week, and this is why we want to stay away from all those foods, because we got to keep this process going. All right, now let's jump back into the presentation. All right, so now that we understand a little bit about why we need specific nutrients to make sure that the mitochondria is functioning, I want to take just another step back, and I want to look at what it takes for a healthy mitochondria to function at its full peak. When you're a baby and probably up into your child ages, in America, it seems like we get our kids on sugar so fast that it starts destroying our mitochondria, and I'll show you this this process here. But when you have, so I'm just going to lay this out. All right, so you have anaerobic energy, you have sugar energy, and then you have fat energy. And yes, your mitochondria does burn sugar, right? So the sugar's not bad. But we need twice as, if this is the halfway mark for fat, you need double the fat than glucose and anaerobic energy, which is just the presence, without the presence of oxygen to burn things for energy. But when you start to get older and we start to eat all the sugar and none of the fat, this is what your body starts to look like. And you start to get more fat, less fat, sorry, more glucose, and your anaerobic stays the same. But the fat decreases, and what takes up the space is glucose to try and keep up with the energy demands for the body. But then you start to get older, and less fat gets burned for fuel. Glucose can't keep up with it, and you start turning into an anaerobic burning machine, which is terrible. This is the last part you want to be, because then you get into a very disease and decay state. And this is where cancers and diseases happen, is when the body's energy becomes less than, and it can't keep up with all the toxin processing and making sure that the cells function right and make sure that they're replicating properly and making sure that they're destroying the old cells. You miss that gap of energy. Anaerobic is taking up most of your body's ability to burn, and you're getting a little bit of glucose, a little bit of fat. This is called the EOMD problem. It's early onset mitochondria decay. We go from healthy to the first sign of mitochondria decay, second sign, third, you're diseased, you're going to die. We can measure this. It is actually this process that takes 45 minutes that can measure what your anaerobic, your glucose, and your fat energy metabolism is at. And if anyone knows of a tech guy, I would love to develop like a freaking thing that's on your wrist that I can just tap a button and say, boom, we know that your mitochondria is doing great because, 1/3 of it or 1/4 of it is anaerobic, 1/4 is glucose, and 2/4 is burning fat. And I'm like, perfect. Or if it's not, how do I get back there? So if I could have a device that does that with a click of a button, I feel like technology should be here to be able to do that. I think it should be in every household. Please reach out to me. But this is the stages of the aging process, and this is how we get into a disease state. All right? Now, this is also very interesting. Glucose and fat. This is so this is glucose. It needs 6 oxygen molecules to turn into 6 carbon dioxide, 6 waters, and 36 ATP from 1 molecule, or let's just say, I think it's 1 gram of glucose. All right. So your ATP to oxygen ratio is 6. All right. From fats, you need 23 oxygens, and you're going to turn that into 16 carbon dioxide, 16 water molecules, and 130 ATPs from 1 gram of fat, 1 gram of glucose. Yes, you need more oxygen. Technically, not that much oxygen. You need more oxygen to burn that fat, but in the overall structure, to get the amount of ATP, the ATP to oxygen ratio, you actually need a little bit less oxygen. So you're actually more efficient in making energy with fat using up oxygen than glucose. So let's get into my top 10 supplements. The whys and the hows. All right. So also I just want to tie in mitochondria, nutrition that we need for mitochondria, and the reason why we're on this ketogenic diet to burn fat instead of glucose so that we can increase our metabolic flexibility and get back into the healthiest stages of your metabolic process. Okay? So, top 10. Probiotics, number 10. All right, probiotics, obviously necessary for gut health. All right, it prevents the bad bugs from overtaking the gut and overtaking the good bugs. And I told Holly this the other day, and I said, when you eat something, what's actually digesting that? Because it's not like your stomach is just like, ripping it apart and saying, oh, yum, 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 let me put this in your bloodstream now. It breaks it down to a certain extent, but your bacteria in your gut is what turns that into the fatty acids, into the glucose, into the other tiny little molecules that feed your system, and they feed off of what you're eating. So technically, the bacteria in your gut, which is 10 times more than the cells that you have in your body, you get all of that from these bad boys, all your nutrition, all your nutrients. All right. So if you can't assimilate food very well, it's because of your gut bacteria. Okay. Eating raw foods will dramatically improve the gut bugs, and people are so scared of bacteria and everything, and always using hand sanitizer. I will never use hand sanitizer. Because we need the gut diversity. And I'm not doing any mommy bashing here if anyone's listening to this that has had a C-section. But you see in C-section babies, they don't get that bacterial baptism of going through the vaginal canal. And it's very, very interesting. You find way more, and even bacteria that never has been there, if like in the vaginal canal, bacteria has never been there before, and then when the baby starts to come out an hour to 2 hours before it starts to happen, you'll see a bunch of bacteria start to accumulate in that canal to almost like breathe life and inoculate this newborn life. And it was like the way God designed it, because C-section babies don't get that, and so they don't get this beneficial bacteria, and they are 5 times more likely to have risk of allergies, 5 times more likely to have ADHD. They have twice the risk of autism, 80% risk of celiac disease, and 50% more likely to be obese. All because they didn't get the bacterial baptism. This is why probiotics are so important. Eat some raw food, and eat a lot of different food. Number 9, vitamin B12 and folate. So when I say folate, you're thinking folic acid, and I'm not saying folic acid. 40% of us have a snippet in our genome that doesn't let us process folic acid into its active compound. You need folate. So folate and vitamin B12 protects against dementia, and these go hand in hand, okay? They increase immune function, they maintain healthy nerves, and it regenerates your cells. So in B12, we don't methylate. Most of us, let's just say half of us almost, don't methylate it. So you can do a $200 test, or you can just buy the active form, the already methylated forms of these. So methylcobalamin is the methylated B12, or hydroxycobalamin. Those are the forms that you're really looking for in your vitamin pills. For folate, and I think I'm getting a little bit of feedback from Holly or Megan, but for 5-methylfolate, so 5-MTHF, or folinic acid, not folic acid, is what you're looking for on your bottles to make sure you're getting folate and B12. And I didn't put the dose. I'll have to go back and get the dose. Selenium. All right, selenium boosts immune function, helps prevent cancer, prevents neurodegenerative diseases, and protects against thyroid dysfunction. Thyroid is a huge epidemic. Thyroid problems are a huge epidemic happening in America. So we definitely need everything we can do to make sure our thyroids are functioning properly, because when that thing goes out, I mean, shit hits the fan. So it just gets worse. Everything gets worse. So what you're looking for is selenocysteine, or selenomethionine. Your dose is 200 micrograms. Number 7, vitamin A. This is important for numerous metabolic reactions and bodily functions. I could go through the list, but I decided to do that because we're just trying to keep this webinar short and to the point. The form you're looking for is retinol. The dose 10,000 to 15,000 IUs. Iodine. You're thinking, I get my iodine and my salt. No, we actually are not getting. I mean, there might be a little bit of iodine in like some iodized salt, but it pales in comparison to what you actually need. Iodine is crucial for thyroid function. The thyroid cannot function without it. And fluoride will counteract iodine. So yes, if you're drinking tap water that's fluorinated, so not only is that terrible for your brain, but also terrible for your thyroid, because let's actually I'm gonna dive into this. All right, we're gonna look at this. We're gonna pull up what's that chart called? The periodic table. We're gonna look at where iodine and fluoride are on the periodic table. Can you guys see this periodic table? You can give me a thumbs up. I can see you in the chat. Okay, cool. All right, let's look at this periodic table. Come on. All right. So in the periodic table, where is iodine? Right there. And where is fluoride? Right there. They are both a halogen in the periodic table. Halogen meaning they need one more electron to turn into a noble gas. So they will, everything wants to be a noble gas. Everything wants to complete their valence shell electrons. So this one is missing one electron and this one's missing one electron. So the thyroid will give iodine, that's how iodine gets attracted to the thyroid, to give it that one extra electron so that it can make thyroxine and turn into your thyroid hormones. Well, fluoride also will take that spot of iodine so that iodine can no longer be in there, and it will make inactive thyroid hormone. So if you're drinking tap water, please stop it. Reverse osmosis is the way to go. You need to make sure that you're getting fluoride out of your system, because you're going to definitely block all thyroid function. All right. Iodine is very important for brain development. So with brain development, there was a study done on kids. The mother, there was three groups, three mothers that were pregnant, about to be mothers, right? And the mothers that did not take any iodine, they had 33% of the children had some sort of cognitive disorder, like ADHD or ADD or something like that, right? The ones that took the minimal amount of iodine had a 10% of brain or cognitive disorders, not like a brain disorder, but like a cognitive thinking, somewhat of a disorder, right? And the ones that took the 1 milligram or a bigger dose of iodine had zero kids that had, well, didn't have zero kids, had kids that had zero brain or neurological disorders that could be like cognitive disabilities that were like ADD or ADHD or anything like that. So iodine for the mom is super important for the baby's brain development. You get that from kelp powder, potassium iodine capsules, doses 1 to 5 milligrams. You can start low, find where your tolerance is at, and then kind of build up from there. You almost feel like you're on like caffeine. You'll get like jitters. Your heart will race a little bit if you get too much iodine. All right. Next slide. Vitamin C. Vitamin C is like my beauty vitamin. All right. You need vitamin C for the formation of collagen and connective tissue. You can't make it without vitamin C. You need vitamin C to make glutathione. We talked about glutathione last week. The master antioxidant of the body that detoxifies you, that literally is like the thing that cleans you out and keeps you going. Glutathione, you need vitamin C to make glutathione, okay? And it's a huge immune booster, probably because of this guy. The form that you need is ascorbic acid or time-release capsules. Dose 1 to 2 grams more if you're sick. Vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 prevents heart disease, synergistically works with vitamin D3. It prevents calcium deposits in arteries, joints, and the kidneys. Those people that are on statins need to have twice as much vitamin K2 supplementation. Vitamin K2 comes in MK4 and MK7. MK4 is the one that you want the most of, but you still need MK7. So you want to dose it at 2,000 milligrams, but in your bottle, you should see that you need at least 100 micrograms coming from MK7, okay? So that's a very small percentage of MK7 from MK4, but you still need the MK7. Magnesium. You have over 300 reactions, enzymatic reactions in your body. It's actually estimated around 600 reactions that need magnesium or cannot function. And I'm going to give you an example. So your body reduces cholesterol and it uses magnesium to block this, to block HMG-CoA reductase, which is an enzyme that converts sugar to cholesterol. So your body uses magnesium to block this reaction that converts sugar to cholesterol. And everyone that has ever told me, like, I'm eating all this fat, and they're like, oh, that's a lot of cholesterol you're eating. And I'm like, no, you idiot, because I'm taking my magnesium, and so do you, because you're eating all that sugar, and it's turning into cholesterol. So you have to have your magnesium, all right? Magnesium is also needed for an enzyme called LCAT, which turns LDL into your HDL. So it takes the fluffy, fatty lipids and turns into high density lipoproteins, HDL. It's needed for that. So you could say magnesium is the key to preventing heart disease. Your dosage, 600 to 800 milligrams. Form, any of the 8s, like citrate, 3 and 8. There's a bunch of 8s. So I take a citrate. I also take a threonate because threonate actually helps with the specific enzymatic reactions in the brain. So you actually can improve like a little bit of brain function with a 3 and 8. But citrate, any of the 8s are good. Vitamin D3, my number 2. We're almost to number 1, guys. Hold in there for me. Number 2, vitamin D3. It acts on more than 1,000 different genes in your body, right? Super important. Shown to prevent the flu better than the flu vaccine. Also, I want to touch on, if you're getting the flu, do you know why chiropractors became so popular? Back in the 1895, I think was the first chiropractic adjustment by B.J. Palmer. But it became so popular because their patients would get rid of the flu and they would not have the flu, and it got rid of the flu so much better than anything that was ever out there. And then that's been shut down and stuffed out, and now we just use them for back pain or whatever. But it actually activates your immune system and fights the flu way better than any vaccine, or vaccines were out then, but than anything that they had then. So I would highly recommend never getting vaccinated. That's just my opinion. Do your own research. But if you do get the flu vaccine, you would do better with just taking vitamin D3, and even better if you got a monthly adjustment, which I highly recommend. In 2009, studies showed that 75% of all cancer deaths in the US could have been avoided by supplementing vitamin D. Hello. That's why it's number 2. You're like, Trey, why is this not number 1? And I'm like, I'm about to tell you. The form, it needs to be D3, which is cholecalciferol, which I should have wrote that right here. Dose, you need 1,000 IUs for every 25 pounds of body weight, not body fat, but body weight. So if you are 150 pounds, so that's 6 times this. No, that's 5 times this. So you need 5,000 IUs. 4, 5, 6. No, it is 6. My math was right the first time. So you need 6,000 IUs if you're like 150 pounds. If you're dark skin, you need to go up to 1,500 IUs for every 25 pounds of body weight. All right. Can you guess my number 1? My number 1, numero uno. Cat's out of the bag. Let's hear it for none other than omega-3. Inflammation. We talked about it last week. Inflammation.
I knew it.
Killer.
I knew you were going to say that.
Secret killer, inflammation. It is like the crux of everything that could go wrong in your body. It's the start, the finisher. It is like the opposite of Jesus. It is terrible. So what do you need to do to combat inflammation? You need to up your omega-3s. All right. So omega-3 dramatically reduces inflammation, improves brain function. So improves brain function so much that your brain needs it, that if you have a brain injury down here, you need to way up your omega-3s. If you ever get a traumatic brain injury, hit your head, something like that. It also enhances muscle growth. I'm still waiting on that, but it's okay. I'm going to still take my omega-3s. Studies link this supplement to almost every modern disease. Weight problems, like link this supplement as in people are deficient in omega-3s. And they've linked that to almost every modern disease, weight problems, seasonal affective disorders, learning disabilities. And most Americans are 40-1, 40 omega-6s to one omega-3. This ratio is killing America, so much so that this is the number for, this is like the reason for all the inflammation, is because you can't get your omega-6s down to 1/10 of that. It should be 4-1. Better yet, 2-1. There's even possibility that could even be beneficial for 1-1. So, interesting point. You actually become not suicidal, but wanting to kill others. I don't know what the exact word for that would be. Once you hit, they found this in studies, once people hit 70 to 1, you become, I guess it's homicidal?
Murderous.
Murderous. Literally become, your brain starts freaking out, going crazy that you want to kill another human being when this hits 70 to 1. So if I kill anyone, I'm just going to say, I'm so sorry, my inflammation markers were really off, Judge. Here's the studies that prove it. All right, so where to get your omega-3s? Cold pressed fish oil or krill oil. A lot of people love krill oil because it's phosphorylated. It gets to the brain better. The brain uses it better. But a lot of my muscle testing finds that the cold pressed fish oil is better, a little bit better, not like amazingly better, but better. So I do the cold pressed fish oil. Your dose should be 1,000 to 3,000 milligrams. All right. I would assume, I don't think I'm 40 to 1, but I would assume I'm probably 10 to 1. I'm probably like, I don't eat perfectly, so I'm not like the best. So I take anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 milligrams a day because I'm trying to get my ratios back from whatever I want to get it down to 1 to 1, right? So I take a pretty high dose, but you need at least 1,000. But if you're trying to bring it down, you're going to need to up it. So I take a high potency fish oil that literally in 1 teaspoon has 1,000 milligrams. It's super high potent. That's my fat bomb in the morning time. I take it with my brain octane oil. So you're probably wondering like, crap, like how the heck am I going to go about finding all the nutritional supplements that do that? Trust me, I did. I still use NutriWest, top of the line from every level, from muscle testing to the quality and the research papers that show absorption, ability to absorb the nutrients. Because if you go to Walmart or I mean even like a vitamin shop, you're possibly, and you're not getting the highest quality supplement, we're just gonna say that. But you're possibly not getting a good supplement that's actually getting into your system, and you could be just pooping it out. Pooping half of it out, I don't know. And especially if your gut bugs aren't there to digest it, you're pooping it out and you're not getting any benefits. So what I did is I went out there and I found a company that made it simple, easy for me to get my nutrition. And literally it comes in a pack. I take my pack in the morning time and at nighttime. I also take more stuff, but if I price this at the NutriWest, what like the highest quality, which is like when I muscle test is a 9.5 out of 10, ID Life comes to a 9. So it's pretty freaking good compared to what anything I've tested out there. And when I was looking for something that I could simplify my life instead of going through 20 and 30 different bottles, I was like looking for like, okay, I just want it monthly and I want it in a freaking little bag that I can just zip it open, take it with me on the road, easy take it. Shackley had something like that. USANA had something like that. Melaleuca had something like that. Isogenic and Viseo. And I was like, oh man, I loved Viseo. I was like, this company is awesome. They actually put their stuff in liposomal and they put it in fat so it gets digested into your system 5 times as much. I thought it was going to be amazing. But when I tested it, it was crap. I don't know if they were using crap supplements or if they were over processing it. I don't know, but it was crap. Melaleuca was crap. USANA was crap. I'm sorry, like 5 or less on the chart from 1 to 10. Shakely, crap. The only one that stood out that was a 7 was Isogenics. And ID Life was a 9. So I highly recommend, if you want to keep it easy, do ID Life. If you're going to go to Walmart and just buy something, use ID Life. It has most everything that has the folate, not folic acid. It has the methylated, everything methylated. and a little bit of the non-methylated. So it gives you a little bit of both. None of these other products had it. And I can't find that product very often in stores. So they're doing a lot of things right. And they give you, I added extra omega-3s, which I would recommend doing that. But you can go to Tenella.id and take a free quiz. The quiz is super easy. If you just go, let's see here. Let's go Tenella.id. Whoops, idlive.com. You can do a quiz right at the top, and you can do your own personal assessment. It says take your free assessment right here. You click on that at the top, and you'll be able to put in your age, your sex, everything that comes into effect that could possibly give you the unique ability of how you process your vitamins, how much you're outside in the sun, all this stuff, and they give you a recommendation. You can take that. Probably will be around $60-65 a month. I added some like Stress Shield. I added, because I mean, we're just super fast-paced society. I wanted that. And I wanted the omega-3s. So I added a bunch of stuff. Mine's about $90 a month. But if I took everything in there and I compared it to the retail value of what I get for NutraWest, it's over $200. So it's a great, great deal. Or you can go get your multivitamin. It's up to you. I do want to touch on, before we go, I feel like we have so much problems with methylating and with getting stuff into our system because, and a lot of things with like our nutrients absorption into our body, because we're not in the sun. There's something about the power of the sun. And if you guys want to, I can do a webinar on it next week. But I want to kind of answer all your questions next week. And that's what I want. If whoever's watching this, for everything that you've had questions on, or you're wanting answers in that's more in depth than just of, hey, what do I eat to get more fat into my system? And you post it on Telegram. I want you to write it down. Write it in Telegram. Actually, just go ahead and post it in Telegram. I'm going to write all this stuff out, and we're going to do a webinar next week on all your questions. If you don't give me enough, then fine. I'm going to do a webinar on sunlight, because sunlight's huge. I mean, obviously, everyone's like, oh, you get your sun to get your vitamin D, right? Yes, it's true. Because vitamin D is actually a marker of photosensitivity, of the just like what plants get their nutrients from the sun, and they have and it's like, and that's you, right? So if you have more vitamin D, that means you're getting more sunlight, which is a good thing. There's possibility that you can get magnesium from the sun. We've actually know this now. You get nitric oxide from the sun. Nitric oxide is a huge benefit for cardiovascular health, right? You get these molecules in your skin, nitrates and nitrites, and when you get out into the sun, it turns into nitric oxide and dumps into your bloodstream. And it's super beneficial. I would highly recommend, this is what I do. I ground to get the inflammation electrons out of my body and get it into the earth and get the earth's electrons into my body, right? So I ground every morning when the sun comes up, and it was 35 degrees this morning. And I was still outside with my shirt off, getting the sunlight, because that morning sun has infrared and UVA light, which opens up, and I'm going to pause this real quick. How do I stop? Oh, here, stop share. All right. So now that you see me, when you get that light, it's almost like a flower is in your body. It opens up to infrared and UVA, right? And then this is how God designed it. When it opens up, then the sun comes when at the most brutal part of the day, from 11 to 2, when the most UVB is poured down on you. But you have these things that open up that absorb it and absorb what would cause inflammation and damage and turns it into obviously a tan, and you don't burn when that happens. If you're able to open these things up, these receptors up in the morning time. So that's like God like designed us like come out of our cave, get out into light, open everything up, and then we can be in light for the rest of the day and not worry about burning because it's absorbing all that UVB during the day because you opened up these receptors, right? But you don't. You stay inside until 10, you go to the beach at 11, and you get burned in 20 minutes because they're just still sleeping and they're still like nothing's happening. So open those things up in the morning time, let your receptors all come out, then for 5 minutes, and then in the middle of the day, get some the UVB, which dramatically increases the vitamin D. And so you're getting your vitamin D, you're getting your niacin, you're getting probably even way more than that we can even measure right now. Light is like the new frontier of research that I'm like looking into. But get outside in the light. Get outside. It's not true. It does not cause skin cancer. Okay? I'll give you the study. It was a meta-data study, which means it studied many different studies. And it proved that the studies proved that there's no correlation between skin cancer and exposure to sun. It's put in us, into our brains. It's screamed at us by marketing and WHO and whatever the WHO, World Health Organization, says, oh my gosh, the sun is bad because the sunscreen company paid us, funded us to do more research and funded all this other things. So yeah, we're going to say sun is bad so they can sell their more sunscreen. And sunscreen is another thing terrible in itself that you have to make sure that you don't cause disruption in your hormones because there's a lot of endocrine disruptors. But there has been, if sunscreen was so good, then why has sunscreen and skin cancer gone up parallel with themselves? Shouldn't it be like an inverse reaction? So don't get me started on the sun. Anyways, so sun, light, even junk light. This is why I wear my blue blocker glasses. Junk light will damage mitochondria. The blue light that you get from your phones, this is about mitochondria now, damages your mitochondria. So I will show you next week if you guys want to, if we want to do a thing on light, how to get a red screen on your phone so you're not constantly hitting your mitochondria with blue light all the time. So, all right. That ends the webinar. We did it in an hour or maybe a little bit less. Perfect. But you guys have any questions on what I touched on?
I don't have any questions. It was great.
I wanted to make sure I covered it pretty in-depthly.
Yeah, you did.
I know, I hope like the mitochondria and the graph where I showed you how different molecules get into the cell, I wanted to really try and paint the picture of why we need vitamins. And it's like your energy, if you can, and I didn't talk about carnitine. I was going to go back to that. There's this one supplement that I would highly recommend. It's from NutriWest. Okay, it's called Total Mitochondria. It has a load of carnitine in it and has some CoQ10. But literally, it said take 1 or 2, and I was like, I can take 3. So I took 3. I slammed 3 back, and I was literally awake for over 48 hours. I took it in the morning time. I didn't sleep that night at all. And then I barely went to sleep the night before. I got to sleep at like 2 a.m. And I finally, like the energy was just still going. And I was like singing in the car, and it was like one of the best days of my life. And I was like, where's all this energy coming from? I was like, oh my gosh, I might have been deficient in carnitine or whatever else. Maybe even CoQ10. But I think carnitine is definitely one that a lot of us are deficient in. So, but yeah, I would highly recommend, even if you go find carnitine somewhere else. But NutriWest does make a impeccable mitochondrial supplement called Total Mitochondria. So, but yeah, get your supplements in. Like, this is why the diet, nutrition, this is why I'm going to live to 150. Like, there's no way that I'm going to die of heart disease, cancer, diabetes that gets 80% of Americans. So, I mean, right? You saw what magnesium does. I take twice as much magnesium as what I showed you in the slides. Why? Well, because there's benefits to even going beyond that. That's like the minimal dosage. And the RDA, let's not get started on the RDA. The RDA is telling us the minimum dosage to not get disease. Do you want to live in barely not getting disease, or do you want to live in the state of pushing performance? And that's just what your budget allows. But for me, I would rather not go to Starbucks. I would rather spend it on my supplements.
Right.
And Holly knows that. Holly's like, you need to cut back our budget on supplements. I go crazy. So you guys don't have to be crazy like me, but you can be a little bit crazy.
That's right. That's right.
Justification for the shoe budget.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to stop the recording right here. And thank you all. If you watched to this point, I see you because I'm watching you guys watch it on YouTube, and I know who's watching it. And literally, thank you, Megan and Holly, for joining me. I love having an audience. I love talking to people and knowing that you're absorbing this information, and I can have this two-way conversation with you guys. And I appreciate you guys being on this webinar.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.